You are now watching Believe. Do you believe?
What's up? Welcome into episode 8 of the Sean Salisbury Show here on the Believe Network. I'm Adam Sager. He is Sean Salisbury. We're just talking a lot of topics to talk about. I got a few here that I want to hit on. Finished week 1 of the preseason. Just kind of give me your overall thoughts on, we only got the 3 games now. It's not the 4 like it used to be. Kind of where you think teams are or where they should be, where young quarterbacks should be, where young players should be as they get ready for games 2 and 3 of the preseason. Now, not a lot of starters are playing long, like a lot of times we saw in game 2, they'd play a half or close to a half and get a lot of those reps. Well, I just saw like my team, the Bears, their starters are only going to play maybe 10 plays because they're on a short week. So new head coach kind of doing things a little different. And we're kind of seeing that around the league. What are your thoughts on the preseason so far?
I think that I'm seeing what I need to say. I prefer joint practices more than I do games. I really do. I'd like more joint practices. If I was a coach and you gave me the choice, I'd say more of my team, more joint practices I can control. For instance, think if the Jets had a joint practice that wasn't Zach Wilson when he got out of the pocket instead of taking a hit, I could have blown the whistle, gone full speed to that point and gone. Now, people are going to get hurt. People are going to get soft tissue injuries. I get all that. It's not a matter of like protecting everything. It's just not, if you put shorts and a t-shirt on, people are going to get hurt. I think, Segs, and looking around the league this week, what I did, I watched Trey Lance and Kenny Pickett. One is fans got to guard against because coaches aren't sticking somebody in the Hall of Fame after a really good game. And then also burying somebody and saying, well, the guy's not any good because, well, he didn't play very well. They're still feeling themselves out, man. When I mean that is feeling out what we can do under certain situations. You can only dominate or play the way you play against that group, whether it's the third group, the second group. So the first preseason game for me is to get a little bit of tempo. Second preseason game, and I don't need to play them a lot, is the feel good. And then there's those bubble guys who may play for a half that you're trying to find out, can I trust him during the regular season? In truth, Segs, even if a guy plays, for instance, let's use Kenny Pickett as an example.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Played really, really well, right?
Yep.
Really good football. Overreaction would say, oh my gosh, we got to start him. Now, if he's playing like that every day in training camp and he's pushing the envelope, then he's ahead of the good. That's his home college stadium, home NFL comfort level for him, right? Practicing every single day there where he is. And so if that's the way it is every day in practice, then the coaches will take notice. There is no doubt. But one game like that just tells me, okay, now I can look to trust him. And it's not the stats, it's how he got to those stats. But we'll overreact. We always do. But with that, I get a chance to see. I'm adamantly against nowadays of seeing too many starters that I know their job's secure. That why I don't want to put them in harm's way. I don't need to see 40 plays from them. If you're 5th round draft pick, you say, man, I'm not sure about him. You want to play him 40 plays, play him 40 plays. I get it. But you're looking for depth. You're looking for guys you can trust and a little bit of rhythm. And my point is just because Kenny Pickett had success in the first preseason game doesn't mean he's going to go dominate September.
Right.
And if he was poor then, doesn't mean he's not going to go play well in September. So you see a lot of different coverages. For me, it's rhythm, health, getting in and out of the huddle just to get a feel. And I truthfully, I'm past the point of play him the most in the second preseason game. If Fields goes out there and plays 2 series and goes 6 out of 8, you feel good about him. I don't need to see any more of him, because I know he's who I'm running out during the regular season. Why risk it? So it already has set the Jets back, and just even if it's 2 or 4 weeks, you got to get him healthy and start over again with Zach Wilson, like a whole new camp when he's back. So I'm okay. I saw some really good and fun performances, and I see some guys that stick out. But I'm looking off the ball, things that don't happen that are obvious in stats. I'm looking for timing on everything, the timing, how they move without the ball. If you're a receiver, are you blocking? As a quarterback, did you make the right decision? Not just the stats. So I thought it was a good start to the regular season, but this is where you got to learn who your depth is, because people who you can count on, like in third week of September, if you're starting right guards down, I got to find out if that guy who's replacing him can play. And I think that would be my focus if I was coaching the rest of the preseason.
Yeah, and that's, I have always felt like the preseason is big for the for the big boys, for the defensive linemen, the offense, just to be able to kind of hit each other. Cause I know they do in practice, but it's very limited now. So just to be able to get that physicality flowing through your body and just getting those hits. Now, yeah, like you said, it doesn't got to be 3 quarters or anything, but if you're, you know, say Penei Sewell with Detroit, one of the best young tackles in football, just getting out there for 15 plays and being able to hit another team's player. And it's not like, you know, they're giving you all these crazy looks in the preseason. It's just more about straightforward, hit the guy, block him, stay in front of him.
It's more me than it is them, Segs. That's what it is. I'm not really worried. You know, in preseason, we don't study the other opponent in preseason. You don't watch tape of your opponent in a preseason game. You put in what you do and you just go play you play football and react to the coverages you're used to seeing in the NFL. And then like on week 2 or 3, you're already starting to look at your opening game in September of game planning against them and, you know, and advanced scouting and all that. So you don't game plan other teams. You game plan for what you want to do well and what you want to see certain, like maybe there's a player that you say is not a good receiver, at least in practice. He hasn't shown that he's really good when in breaking routes where there's trouble, right? So let's go find out. That's what the preseason. Let's call a dig route or a slant or a shallow crosser where he's got to catch the ball between the numbers or the hash marks. Let's see how he operates in there. Or maybe there's a guy who doesn't operate or a quarterback who doesn't make consistent throws outside the numbers. Let's get him on the edge and let's throw some stuff that we can see how he challenges the edge. And you're right, how a guy gets up on the second level with an offensive lineman. What that quick burst is, even if he didn't get any sacks, the edge rusher. I watched Aiden Hutchinson. He showed me some energy that I know that just quick off the ball and beating somebody across his face, which tells me now I don't need a whole lot of him in the preseason.
Right.
I love his energy, but he's a difference maker on Sunday, and I'd rather have him make a difference in September than on August 18th. That's my approach to preseason.
Yeah, it's definitely something to watch and see how, you know, these young coaches come in and kind of change things, and then the new rules change things, and just how everybody works differently throughout the season. One guy you mentioned just a few minutes ago, Zach Wilson of the Jets, got hurt. So kind of my next point or next topic I wanted to hit on was the quarterbacks in New York. Just, you got Daniel Jones, you got Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson goes down, tries to make a cut up the field, like you mentioned, in the preseason, something that you really just got to tell your quarterback, I know you're trying to make a play and you don't want to take that out of them and all that lingo, but just go out of bounds, man. Like this isn't, you're getting a first down. And like, I don't even want him doing that in the first quarter of the 10th game of, you know, with 4 minutes into the game, you're just trying to pick up a first down on second down. Like, don't be doing that kind of stuff. You're too important. The position is too important. So now he's out for weeks, and we'll see when he gets back. Varying reports. And then Daniel Jones just reportedly has just been terrible for the Giants. And now there's talk that Brian Dable is going to give Tyrod Taylor some snaps with the first team this week. I mean, that's not what you want for your, you know, you're going into your biggest season as a pro, trying to get that next contract and at least show other teams what you can do. Maybe it's not the Giants, but show other teams. And if you're not on the field, it's going to go bad for Daniel Jones. So just what are you seeing from those two guys? Did you see maybe Zach Wilson maybe thinking he could take that next step, or do you still worry about him? And then Daniel Jones just struggling.
Yeah, let me start with Jones first. Thanks. Here's the irony of him. He's shown times when I'll watch him sometimes in a regular season game, and I'm like, damn, the guy's got some ability, right? Got great straight line speed, and he'll make some plays. And you say, why? What's the roadblock? Why isn't he better? And then all of a sudden you'll hit it, and you're like, dude, the inconsistency of him. And I know his team's been bad. I get it. But we got to start to see more consistency, good or bad team or not, right? So we know what to build on. And maybe in truth sakes, there may get a time, and you think when you bring in a new coach like a Brian Dable, that you'll have it with the change of that you'll get this feeling of, okay, I fit perfectly into this system and things are going to go, well, this is who I am now, and I'm going to be better. Maybe, I'm listen, they're going to keep him around to see what happens. But one thing I know about Tyrod Taylor, he's a pro. It doesn't matter wherever he's been, he's invested in the team. He's a support. You can count on him in games. The question is, can he sustain it for a full season? Whether it's injury or being replaced, he always seems to be replaced by the first-round guy. Now, maybe he's a guy that's going to replace somebody else, right? But the inconsistency of Daniel Jones, and I want to have compassion, but there comes a point in time, Segs, when it's either you're not good enough here, maybe it's somewhere else. Maybe like a Mitch Trubisky, you needed a different venue. And it may be the case for Daniel Jones, because I have seen where I'm like, damn, I don't want to quit on the guy, but we can't keep saying this. We can't keep doing this regardless of the team. Was that so? I it may come time now. Maybe all of a sudden the light switch will go on between now and September, and he'll flash. But you leave your glove out on the mound enough times, somebody else will come get it and pick it up. And Tyrod Taylor is as good as any as a backup in this league, and who can start games. With Zach Wilson, I think there's a lot of high-end potential. I think he's extremely gifted. I do. I think that his problem is bad team last year, try to do too much, and looked like he was swimming in the mental part of trying to keep up, right? And that's normal. But I also saw some things he did against the Texans a couple of years. You say, okay, right, another year with LaFleur and getting him some weapons, he's going to be good. And I think he is. I do, because he's got he is different level skill set. For him is make me easy plays. I know he's going to make spectacular throws. And I say that a lot about young players. Can you make the play that everybody's supposed to make? Right? Daniel Jones hasn't been able to make the play everybody's supposed to make on a regular basis. So Zach Wilson, but you hit the points, Segs, that Barry, you'll get some say, yeah, he's shown he's a tough guy in the preseason. I don't need to see it.
No.
Because you're no good to me now for the next 2 to 4, maybe 6 weeks, depending, standing on the sideline, and it slows his development process down. And it just leaves open more questions. When he made that cut inside, I would have told him pregame, dude, just get down. I don't need 4 extra yards in a preseason game. And you're trying to be a hero, like you said, in game 5, and it's 1st and 10, and you get 6, and you have to run through 2 other dudes to get me 4 more, and the score's 0-0. Dude, we know get down.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take now. If it's 3rd and 9 with a minute to go in the game, you got to do what you got to do, dude. But not the preseason. And that's just called learning how to. We've seen quarterbacks like, dude, you don't need to prove to, hey, look how hard he's playing in the preseason. Those players know, they see it every day on the practice field who you are. So it was an unnecessary. It was unnecessary and silly. Once again, back to the controlled part of joint practices, where my whistle would have blown and he wouldn't have gone to the ground, right? But it would have been still physical up until that point. So I think Wilson will be a player, but it's just something. He needed the practice time. Screw the game time in preseason. He needs these extra couple weeks on the practice field to get ready for the regular season. So at some point in time, we got to say, stop, man. Don't be a hero in the preseason. Save your hero syndrome for when it's 4th and 4, and I need you to dive for a first down at the first down marker in week 11, week 12. Not now. And it set him back. So, and, another veteran there in Joe Flacco, who will play fine, but you're extremely limited with Joe at this stage. And with LaFleur, I think that he could have taken another level. And I think he still will, Zach Wilson, but it's just another way of slowing the process down. Now he's going to get back, and we're going to be in September more than likely, and he's going to have to learn on the fly again while his team's already played a game or 2.
Yeah, and year 2 is such an important year for not only just, every player, but quarterbacks.
Yes.
The game starts to slow down a little bit, from the speed of your rookie year. But one guy, I don't know how much you got to see of him, but he looked like the guy we all thought was Trevor Lawrence. It felt like every throw he was making had that zip you saw from. I remember, I don't know if we were watching the game together or I texted you, the first time he walked onto the field at Clemson, and he threw a ball from the far hash to his left all the way to the sideline. I mean, on a line, like everybody on Twitter was just like, whoa. Yep. And I remember texting you, or we were together, and just being like, yeah, you see the hype, you see why the hype, just from that one throw. He was making those throws in his first preseason game. And if he can build off that and stay healthy, and the weapons stay healthy, he's got some good weapons now. ETN, the running back, I think will be huge for him out of the backfield. We saw those throws, and I expect him to be that guy to take that step. Maybe the biggest step of all the year 2 guys.
Oh, I think you're going to see quantum leaps, not only from the way he's coached, expanding what he does, and with the run game, it'll help expand an offense, right? The vertical and horizontal stuff that makes a defense game plan for full field. Listen, I that's why when I listen to people the way they talked about him at times last year, oh, bust and stuff like
come on.
I mean, the stuff we put on these young quarterbacks, it's tough enough being in the league 8 years to sustain great success, but on a bad team, you're the first pick of the draft, and everybody in the world thinks you need to dress in a phone booth and you're Trevor Lawrence and you're supposed to. You're not allowed to make a mistake, which is horseshit and wrong. Okay. Right. The kid is going to be a great player. And if they'll build around him and stay healthy around him, and he doesn't feel like he has to make every single play, in the process, he'll make more plays than necessary, even when he doesn't think he has to. And you hit it when we talked about at Clemson, and the same thing at Jacksonville. Making certain throws, even if, let's say, the guy dropped it or he missed by a quarter of a foot, as long as 2 things for me. He's throwing it to the right guy, so he's making good, urgent, quick decisions. Now, on the simple ones, accuracy obviously matters, but on certain throws, you're talking about like, whoa, this is different. That he's making throws, you say, okay, now if I'm a defensive coach, I realize that 22-yard back to 20 comebacks, and he's on the left hash, and then the pros are closer together, obviously, that he can make that throw consistently. You're like, okay, so when I see those, even if he's, because if you look at numbers on certain guys, you say, well, I didn't like those stats. Yeah, you go back and watch what you're supposed to be looking for at the quarterback. You got to see the forest through the trees. Like, come on, man. That's not normal the way he makes that throw, right? And I think he's got skills that aren't normal. And in truth's sake, you watch Clemson every week, damn near, and so did I, that their offense actually limited how good he is. They were not they didn't do what Sarkisian did with Mac Jones. They were a lot more limited on what they did. For whatever reason, they just weren't. It's not like you went in there saying, man, this is confusing to a they were fortunate Trevor Lawrence was that good in their personnel. Now get him in his place like Doug Peterson, who likes to do a few things. I think that you're right. I will not be shocked if Davis Mills and him are the ones who make the next quantum leap, because I think Mills can throw it. And it's not because he's in Houston. All of them are. Zach Wilson could have made a quantum leap because he had a long way to go. I'm not sure Fields has the team right now to allow him to, but you'll see flashes of brilliance. But there is no doubt in my mind. I have not one question over from last year to this year if Trevor Lawrence is going to be a player. I actually think he's going to disrupt the division with a few wins in games they're not supposed to win, and he'll be the reason, because he'll come out and throw for 420 in a game. You're like, oh, shit, okay, now I get it now, and get him some players. So, yeah, I'm with you. I saw enough, and the truth is, Segs, please don't milk this and don't wear him out in game 2 to the point where you think you got to see 25 more throws. Give me a couple series where he feels good and get his ass out.
Yep.
And in game 3, Segs, honestly, if you want to go in there and throw a couple screens and hand the ball off a few times just for rhythm, fine. But I ain't putting him in harm's way, because imagine what happens to that franchise if all of a sudden that dude misses 8 weeks. Well, it's the chance of him getting hurt. Well, guess what? I'll take my chances in September as opposed to August, because I don't learn crap in August. So I've seen enough of what I need to see from Trevor Lawrence to let me know that there's a new level coming about him, and it'll happen sooner than later.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch all these young quarterbacks, see if any of these rookie quarterbacks, Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, can get on the field this year and make an impact for their teams. But switching over to college, we've been hitting it hard, and it's something that's not going away. It's the NIL. It's all this craziness of money going to players through endorsements and all this stuff. Well, we get our first story of something we've talked about on this podcast.
That's going to happen, Segs. We knew it was coming.
We just didn't think it would be 2 weeks from now or from then. The season hasn't even started. So quarterback at LSU, Myles Brennan, walks away from football. He just says it sounds like Jaden Daniels is going to be the guy, and he's not getting the starting job. And it's just been a rough go for him at LSU. And instead of transferring, he's just going to stay in school and finish his degree, and good for him. That's fine.
I don't have a problem with it at all. Right.
Here's the thing, though. Before the season, he signed deals with Raising Cane's, Smoothie King, and a few other companies in
like
the area
7
there.
of them. Right.
Yeah, and down by Baton Rouge. And supposedly in all those deals, it doesn't matter if he walks away. He gets all the money. So this kid cashed in, and he's not going to play a second of football for LSU this year or in the future, and he still gets all his money. How the hell did these companies not write in these contracts if you walk away from the team before the season starts, at least, not even like halfway through, just before the season, you don't get paid.
Right.
It's mind-blowing to me. I don't blame the kid, because if you can do it, why not? Especially if his heart's not in football. That's how you get hurt, if you're just out there kind of half-assing it. So, I mean, good for Myles Brennan for getting the money, and shame on these companies for allowing a kid to do this to them.
Yeah, Segs, this story and many more are going to have so many layers to it. First off, and he was a highly recruited kid that they loved at LSU. Remember, the last time he played was 2020. Played 3 games in Baton Rouge. They were high and said, "Okay, we can't wait till post-COVID, get him out." Then he gets hurt, like if fishing or at a fishing camp.
Yeah,
can't play, so he doesn't play at all in 2021. And from what I've heard, is that like the difference in, and this is not a knock, when I see this happen before, guys just don't love football and they want to do something else. I think he's getting married. I think he's engaged or got a fiance or something. So that maybe he's got other interests. I don't think he comes from a family that, from what I understand, I don't know if this has anything to do with it, that he doesn't have to earn the money to make sure that they live. Right. Does that make sense for some who come from no money, right? So I think he's okay at least there. And, you know, some guys have priors. Like I've heard stories like when Joe Burrow was there, and, you know, my affiliation with LSU is that he'd be there before coaches would be there studying, not because he wanted people to see him, because he loved football. And there's other quarterbacks, and maybe Brendan being one of those, that wasn't his thing, right? That it was so that other, and it's okay to have other interests, but you also, it can't be a hobby if you want to be great at it, right? You can survive it, be a guy.
Yeah.
And it's hard when he decided not to play football. That I get. And so I've said the same thing about you. Is like, when are these companies going to protect themselves? Because if that's my money, I want to reap. Now, you can't write in incentives in it. It's against the NC2A rules or whatever they are. But I can, it would seem to me, if I say, here's $2 million for 3 years, that if you serve 6 months of the contract, then I'll just prorate it like you do in any other job.
Yeah, exactly.
Or when you pay a bill and you move out, they say, we owe you $380, right? Same thing here. But here, and Chris Gordy, who works at the station, you know, obviously know Gordy,
big LSU guy,
and he's a huge LSU and does that, you know, the game, the SEC show, right? Football. He does an SEC show. So Gordy, I asked him, he came on my show today, the last segment. I was talking to him about it. He said, "Well, Sean, here's the deal. Remember, it's the buyer beware. You when you got Myles Brennan, it wasn't." And if you're the business and you say, you can't just assume starting quarterback. When you go get him, you're hoping a 5-star starts, right? Right. But if he happens to be a backup or gets hurt, dude, that's buyer beware. That's like life. You're taking a shot that a 2-star or 3-star comes in and beats a guy out. Your 5-star sitting there and he's not playing. Do you feel like giving him $2 million, what am I doing, right? That's something the business has to decide. But I also think, and this goes on, Segs, and you know this, I can't be paying, most guys don't leave football. They transfer. They don't quit football, but some do. So the question is, did you get Myles Brennan, the football player, or did you sign Myles Brennan, the digital guy, the guy who can go on Twitter with 20-some thousand followers and still talk about the place called Walk-Ons, which is a big bar, a great bar in Baton Rouge, and all that. So where you really invested in, Gordy said, invested in the guy as opposed to just the quarterback. So that's something, and do you reap your benefit and your return? And like at Texas A&M, and they're doing all these things, these schools now are doing it all where what's not compartments, but there's on campus where the school has they have a specific group for name, image, and likeness.
Oh, yeah.
And some are paying it out like you would, like, let's say, for instance, you're a billionaire and your kid, you got him on the trust fund. When you're 21, you get this amount. When you're 25, you get this amount and more. When you're 30, so you're not spending it. And some are doing it. Here's this first $40,000, signed a $3 million deal. The second $40,000 comes in. So you start to see how that's cut up. But you got to, if you're a business, aren't you going to say, wait a minute now, I'm not going to keep paying or giving you guys money for name, image, and likeness if the guy's at least not on the team.
Right.
I didn't say starting, but on the team. So how much influence does he have on TikTok and all that to get people there? And maybe a ton of it, right? So that's the next question. But yeah, if you think this is the last time, it's going to be the same with transfer, Segs. At some point this year, a 5-star at some position who's getting money is going to get beat out.
Right.
And so you as the business got to say, well, buyer beware. I went with the coach. Then what happens is does that guy go to this university and say, I thought this guy was a better player. You recruited him. I gave him $2 million. Well, he got beat out. Sorry. He didn't say starter. It said,
right.
I'm endorsing your product. So if I'm the business owner, I would like to protect myself.
Right.
If I'm the player, I need to protect myself. That's why you got to guard against it getting litigious to where people are suing because they want their money, they want protection. And Myles gets to keep all of it. If the rule says keep it, keep it.
Right, for sure.
No problem. But they're also, I can't blame the company. At some point in time, companies come back saying, I got to prevent this kind of stuff from happening to save my money as well.
Right. And one thing people need to understand is the fact that, you know, I think a lot of people just assume, you know, say Bryce Young in Alabama is getting McDonald's and pizza, all these big national brands. Well, no, a lot of the money's coming from local car dealerships, local businesses. You mentioned a bar in LSU or in Baton Rouge. So there's a lot of local flair when it comes to these NIL deals, especially for the players that are more likely to transfer, guys that aren't, you know, quite as big on the national level, but they're in town. They're well known because they're part of LSU football or Alabama football or Michigan football. And so that's where it's hard, because it's like, yeah, if you got McDonald's and you transfer from LSU to USC, McDonald's gonna be like, okay, that's fine. You're still on a national brand.
Right.
We're a national brand. That's fine. But if you go from like LSU to Middle Tennessee State or something, then we'll see what happens. But it's so many small local businesses to that university.
There's no doubt. And depending on like SC, the size of the town, LA feels, even though you're local, feels national because of all the reach. You're in Baton Rouge, New Orleans and Baton Rouge, and you leave there. So the question is, does your popularity still make the investment worth it? Because everybody there knows who Myles Brennan is.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. Then if it's McDonald's, even though it's a national brand, if you're the person who bought that franchise in Baton Rouge, or you're like, wait a minute, I own the Canes in Baton Rouge, but it's a franchise. But the Canes in Los Angeles doesn't want to pay him and share the fee that we're trying. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. There are layers of covering this. And Segs, what they're doing also, some of these guys, I thought it was Caleb Williams. I'm pretty sure the SC's quarterback now, that I read an article about him that the depth of some of the name, image, likeness, what they're doing, you know, a financial manager and business manager, where like these brands that you see LeBron and Michael Jordan, these guys build for long. Now it's got to be awful big to build Tiger Woods brand.
Yeah.
But what they're doing, instead of the instant gratification of cash on hand, here's $50,000 for your come and give 4 speeches at our company, and the sales speeches, right? Or to make sure everybody's eating burgers the way you want to, or a pizza place, that within that, maybe they get cash too, but people are starting to say, I want a long-term relationship. I don't want it to end in 2 years when I'm done, that I'm building it here. And when I end up going to the NFL for 7 years or 10 years, I'd like the brand to carry out and we expand into the national brand, and then I continue to do it. So there's some that are trying to enter into percentage of ownership, right? And why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to build equity in a company instead of, like, if you can afford? Now some need who doesn't want the cash on hand, but why not? If they're allowing it, build it into your own enterprise, build it into your own business where you got 15 endorsements, and they're, instead of short-term 2-year, the next guy comes in. I want to build this out, not just build it in.
Stuff you can hopefully take to the NFL if you're that type of player.
And now they stick you on, and maybe you become a member of the board of advisors, or they stick you on a board 5 years from now. And then that guy who owns this says, dude, let's go in and buy 18 other franchises. And before you know it, you were the endorser. Now you're a franchisee, and you're also not only franchisees, that you're now paying some kid in college that you trust, that's now there, that you're endorsing them while you're making money because you're still part of the equity partnership. Do it. And if I was a big time star in one of those type of places, I would try to build it long-term relationship, as opposed to just you're here for a year, let's sign you for a year and see what happens. I would do everything I could to try and build it big and see where we go from there if you can. But it's a slippery slope, Segs, that there's going to have to be some changes, or stuff like this will happen. And I think, didn't Quinn Ewers, when he left Ohio State, take $1 million plus with him?
Yep.
I mean, all that money. Now he's a national name,
Right.
but if you're the car dealership local there that gave it to him, say it's yours, you're not reaping any benefit
Yeah,
from
you don't
it.
care what he's
drive
doing
a
down
new car in Austin.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So you got to weigh it. It is hey, buyer beware. If you're going to invest some money, I would want to protect it. But then there's some that are just going to say it was worth it, and I'm going with it. And some are going to do it, Myles Brennan, and count on him, Myles Brennan, the person, not Myles Brennan, the quarterback.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely interesting. It's another layer that we've talked about. And I'm sure we're going to see something in the next month or two or in the next year that we weren't even talking about when it comes to name, image, and likeness and what a player does and how he does it. And, you know, like we've always said, everybody's still learning from this. The coaches, the universities, the players, the advisors, you know, everybody's learning from this. Speaking of college quarterbacks, let's talk about some guys that we're excited to see that maybe a lot of people don't know. Everybody knows Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, the big names in college football, but maybe some up and coming names that you just mentioned. Quinn Ewers is one of the guys I have down. Kind of give me what you think of him. And you know, he's been down there in Texas. Now he's back in Texas after going to Ohio State for the year. Like we said, you know, big kid, strong arm. What do you think he can do for the Longhorns this coming season?
Well, Segs, I know this. And there's pressure on him too. Why? Because there's a guy named Arch Manning who's committed too, right?
He's on his way.
There's that. With Quinn Ewers, I worked with him when he was going into the 9th grade at a camp for 2 days. And they brought him up to the older guys. He was just kind of back there, taller, right? Kind of nonchalant, was in with the older guys, had his hands in his shorts, just a great kid. I spent time talking, and I've stayed in touch with them over the years since he left. But, and then he comes up and I say, well, let's run this deep comeback on the outside. And the ball whistled different when it came off his hand. And it was it's a quick flick and sling, right? Talk about gunslinger. I'm like, I told the guy at the camp after, I said, this is different. This kid's different. And well, little do you know, he goes to South Lake Carey. He's well coached by Todd Dodge's son, Riley Dodge. And next thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire, and he's the top guy in the country at his position before he transfers. And CJ Stroud, tribute to him, fought him off, man, played his ass off, and now he's the top guy. And Quinn has a chance to do it. Now, Sark, what it does for Texas is at least going in. We'll see how he plays.
Yeah.
But he's a big, strong, he can rip it, athletic Segs. He's one of those guys that like throw it 80 yards, not as a freshman, sophomore, flat foot dunking, you know, that kind of guy.
Yep.
But the ball jumps out of his hand. So what it gives Sark, at least going in, is the ability. Now they got to get some stops defensively, but to spread the field, unlike he's had, even with Mac Jones, Mac can't throw like him. Now, Mac may be accurate and process information faster, but the ball's just different coming out of his hand. So Segs, if he's right, and what I know about him, then Sark's going to have himself one hell of a fun time ripping it. But we'll see how he handles big game situation, all the pressure that goes with playing quarterback there. But he's got everything you want from a guy who, you're lining up with a guy, he is that guy. Now, does that guy parlay and hit and is accurate? Does that guy parlay into, at the end of the year, it's like, well, Arch Manning's going to have to wait and sit when he's a freshman, right? So we're going to see, but he can say, you trust when I see a guy different on throwing it. Now, where it ends up, he can throw it through a car wash and he can throw it over the car wash. The question is, can he hit the car wash? Now, he did college and high school, and he was extremely good throwing it all over. College is different. We'll see, but he's got as good a play caller in the country as there is calling plays for him. So Jeff Lebby at Oklahoma, who was at Ole Miss, and this guy and Lane Kiffin, I mean, Mike Leach, he's got it. So he's got every single thing you want. Now we're going to find out if he's got cut your heart out, that guy who will cut your heart out and feed it to you. I think he does, but we'll see, and I'm anxious to see.
Another guy that I'm fascinated. I remember watching a game of his late last year. I don't know who he was playing or if it was in the playoffs or what it was, but Cam Ward, who's now at Washington State from Incarnate Word, transferred out there to Wazoo. You know, some people have this kid as a first-round quarterback next year. That's the type of talent he has. He can throw it, he can run, he can do a little bit of everything. And,
he
you
threw
know,
47 touchdowns and 10
yeah,
picks last year.
I mean,
47 and 10. So he was pretty good.
He's got the feet. I've seen people talk Lamar Jackson when it comes to just arm strength, his ability to move. Maybe not quite the athlete Lamar Jackson is, because Lamar can do stuff that maybe we've only seen Mike Vick do with his feet out of the quarterback position. But Cam Ward, what are your thoughts on him heading into the season? I don't know how good Wazoo's going to be, but he's there.
Yeah, and he's got a new coach, you know, because Rolovich is gone, obviously.
Yep.
And I think, who is it? It's Jake. Is it Dickert? Jake Dickert's the head coach there.
Yeah.
I believe now. So it's perfect offense for him. He's about, Segs, think 6'2-ish, 225. So really prototypical when it comes to he's not 6'5", but I look at that guy 6'3" or something and move and physical. Yeah. I think there's only one guy who had more yards than him last year, and that was Bryce Young. So, and people don't, when they say incarnate word, what kind of, I'm telling you, he was well coached. That school, Segs, because I hear a lot of it here, right? He can play. Right. Now he's going to an open offense. It's a tougher conference, but everything, and coming out of spring from all the indications were that he was off the charts. So I think we're looking at a guy who's got a chance, and he's going to be, you're not going to hear about him much going in. You watch, but he's that guy that all of a sudden halfway through the season, you're like, if it all works out the way he is, but it's a good, he's got everything necessary, feet and arm, and up there in the driving wind and rain to compete and make an impact as a transfer. I like his style.
Yeah. Do you have any guys that you're excited to see that maybe people aren't talking about, or guys that you're surprised that maybe you're looking at a mock draft or quarterback rankings and you're like, whoa, this guy's up there. Let's see how he plays this year.
Yeah. I wrote some names down. I did it a couple months ago and I went over, at the beginning of the summer, and I rewrote some names too that come to mind as guys that to keep an eye on. We mentioned yours, the kid at Purdue, Aiden O'Connell, moves it around a little bit. Plus, with Braum, he's going to throw it, right? Yep. And be well taught. I'm intrigued, hugely intrigued, because of his ability with Will Levis at Kentucky. I am. He is a body who can, he can, go ahead.
Do you think NFL teams want to see him throw the ball a little bit more, maybe a little more there's different in terms of how he's throwing it, where he's throwing it, the routes, the concepts and all that?
No, well, you have to.
Right.
They're going to want to see it going in. But I've seen and talked to a couple people, but I've also seen some people that have watched him that think there's another level to his game. Yet when you just look at raw ability, he can throw it. The question is, how much will they do it? Right. Because there's no question about it. Couple other names, who's accurate, who may not get a look, but you'll put up huge numbers, is Will Rogers at Mississippi State's going to put up numbers. Obviously Jackson's Dart, but Dart's still in a battle for winning a job, and he comes highly regarded. I'll tell you what, as a pro guy, now he makes all the throws, and getting his new coach, Billy Napier from the Raging Cajuns. This Anthony Richardson kid's a player. Now we got three guys at Florida, at Miami, especially the kid from Miami, which I'll get to. I wrote his name down in a second, but Anthony Richardson at Florida. And I also watched and listened to what our guy, Greg Cosell, said at watching some tape about him. And it matched up to what I saw. Anthony Richardson's got pro ability with some dynamic skills. Does that make sense? Right. And he's a really good player. And another one, then there's the Brennan Armstrong kid at Virginia. I think it's in Virginia, the lefty. You've seen him. I don't know if you've seen enough of him. I saw him about 3 times last year. All right, Segs, Utah, Cam Rising. You and I both talked to him about him a week or two ago a show or two ago about Utah's got a guy that they finally got an explosive guy who's got national championship ability on a team that's got national championship hopes, be well coached. So explosive. And I'll give you a couple more names that stick out. Keep an eye because they play fast, even though on Hendon Hooker, the quarterback at Tennessee, Heupel, they're going to run 90 plays a game. I would also keep an eye on the other kid that I've talked to you about in Miami is Tyler Van Dyke, the Miami quarterback. He is a really, really explosive football player and has a chance. And if you remember when he took over for De'Aaron King, things started to get better at Miami. So Miami and Florida got quarterbacks we haven't seen in a while where we look like, at least head into a season, they got something to work with. And then finally, aside from the names that are obvious, meaning, Caleb Williams and that group, is that I'm curious, and I don't know how he's going to be, Segs, is Dylan Gabriel, the transfer to Oklahoma, who took over when Caleb Williams, because his offensive coordinator, Jeff Lebby, has been a guy, a lot of RPO, and is now with Brent Venables at Oklahoma when he's been at Ole Miss and been around, and he coaches it. He's a hell of an offensive coordinator. So I'm anxious to see how Gabriel works, but there are some names, and I think the Devin Leary kid at North Carolina State, I believe that's where he is a good player. So we got a litany of players, and some that people haven't heard of, and some that are real intriguing, and some that are obvious.
Yeah, some other names that I've been thinking. Sam Hartman at Wake Forest. He's another guy that's been talked about.
Depending on his health, right?
Yes, yeah, it's all about health with him.
Remember his health with the. Right.
I remember after the draft, I went through and I was just looking at a lot of the mock drafts just to see. I like to look at them and see who people think are going to be first round talents this upcoming season.
Right.
There was, I went through maybe the top, at least my top 6 or 7 NFL mock drafts. And there was, I think, 8 or 9 different quarterbacks that were all taken. It had Bryce Young and CJ Stroud at the top of pretty much everyone. Will Levis was in there. A lot of the guys we've just talked about are in there. So, and Sam Hartman was one of them. I think that there's just a lot of good quarterbacks around the country when you talk.
Oh my gosh. And a lot of great young ones too,
right.
Too. Yes.
The one guy that really intrigues me because where he transferred to is Bo Nix. He was not the guy that everybody thought he was going to be at Auburn. Struggled at times, had some really good games, but he was not the guy everybody thought. I'm interested to see what he does out there at Oregon in that offense. So,
and he's tough as he'll come challenge you, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of guys there, you look at the Big Ten, Peyton Thorne at Michigan State. He's a guy that maybe is more of a runner, but we'll see if they can develop him into more of a passer this year. You got the
Grayson McCall kid at Coastal Carolina.
He's another one that is talked about as a possible first round pick.
Right.
So there's a lot of guys, the duo at Michigan. I saw someone today say that he didn't have Michigan ranked in his top 25 because they have a dual quarterback system. Like, didn't they just go to the college football playoff with the same dual quarterback system?
Right.
So
they're going to be better than the top 25. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the point we've made right over these last few minutes is there's a lot of quarterback talent, and we've probably missed guys that we've forgotten about.
I can tell you a couple we have missed. And I think a couple of them have we mentioned yours, who I think has a lot to prove because the transfer and the pub. Caleb Williams is going to be fine.
Yeah.
A couple that stick out is Keaton Slovis at Pitt.
Oh, yeah.
Keaton Slovis, who transferred to Pitt. We'll see. When you think about it, JT Daniels now at West Virginia, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
He's at West Virginia, so he wants to have a big year because he was so highly pubbed. Keaton Slovis, another SC guy, even though now JT Daniels from Georgia and is Slovis at Pitt. Well, then you also got Jackson Dart, as I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
All three have moved, and they're held like, whoa, what are we going to get from him? The guy we're not talking about was the first pick of the draft going into last year, and that's Spencer Rattler.
Yep, that I was just going to say his name.
He carries around probably the biggest question mark, but oh my gosh, he can be back into the first round. He's out there with Frank Beamer's son, Shane Beamer at South Carolina, and he's got a whole new career to kick off, new life at South Carolina. But nobody even thought he was going to head out that way. They thought he was going to be headed, towards Arizona State. Is a lot of people what they thought, out towards where he's from. Well, got a chance to revitalize his leadership, how people trust in him. He's going to be under as much scrutiny as anybody, even though it's South Carolina. Because remember going in, he and Sam Howell were supposed to be top 5 picks. Well, Howell's in the league now, but obviously as a backup trying to make a team. And then you got Rattler, who was supposed to be the consensus number 1 quarterback, let alone number 1 pick of the draft. And here he is battling for his football career, coming back after losing his job to Caleb Williams. So it's going to be interesting to see how he responds to the pressure and the opportunity and what they're going to do with that offense.
It's amazing when you think about it. You just mentioned how USC has Dart and Slovis and forgetting the other guys that are out there that have
Slovis
left.
and JT Daniels.
Daniels.
Right.
And they've left and become, at least they're vying for starting jobs at the school they're at now. You look at Oklahoma. They had Spencer Rattler, who you said was supposed to be the #1 pick going into last year, and then kind of fell apart. And the freshman came in and Caleb Williams took over, and people were talking about him being the best quarterback in the country, hands down. If you've said it, if he was in the draft, he would have been the #1 pick. Well, he's gone. You're Oklahoma. You've lost what should have been 2 #1 picks in a lot of people's eyes. One struggled, one just left because the quarterback or because the coach left. Now you're sitting here. Yeah, you've got a good quarterback in Caleb Daniels, and you've got good coaches, Brett Venables and everybody that's there. But man, you've lost a lot, and you're still a top 10 team. Some have top 5 going into the season.
With a transfer now, and then you think about where Oklahoma's been with Mayfield, with Jalen Hurts, with Kyler Murray, every time you turn around, somebody's either winning a Heisman Trophy or the first pick of the draft. So life has been good in Oklahoma, and the fact that you can lose Caleb Williams and get the transfer and see how that works. But it is the transfer portal. Put it this way. There's a lot of guys who got a chance to be special at places they didn't start their college careers.
Right.
I mean, there's maybe just as many. I mean, you start to think of the numbers and look at, hey, we mentioned Jaden Daniels, Arizona State.
That's another,
leaves, and he goes in and wows them. He grabbed Brian Kelly, the job around the throat. Myles Brennan's no longer playing, and he's the guy, and he beat Nussmeier's son, Doug Nussmeier, the coach. His son's there, and now this transfer is going to be going from the Pac-12 to the SEC, and Brian Kelly's got himself a player. Who knows? Because you remember when he was a freshman, he was like the freshman of the year at Arizona State, and people were raving about him. So we'll see how that goes. But there's a lot of guys that are trying to revitalize their careers elsewhere that didn't start, that still have a chance to be, if Rattler has a great season, somebody will take him in the first round. I'm sure of it. But we got a lot of guys that we could be heavy dominated first round quarterbacks next year. So
it's a big class. We haven't seen a lot of big classes, but this is a big class coming in that I think have first, second round talent when it comes to the NFL draft. All right, we're going to end this one, but we're going to start breaking it. We got big football games to start the college football year. So we'll get into those. We'll start breaking those games down and what it means, when you got these big games, and if you lose, how can you get back? And we'll look at schedules, and we'll start getting into all the meat of college football as we get close.
Can't wait.
Great show, Sean. It was awesome.
You too, brother. It's awesome. I cannot wait. And we're one step closer to talking about X's and O's on a regular weekly basis all the way through February.
No more preseason talk, please.
Nah, I'm done with it.
Yeah,
but we'll finish it up next week before I get into the good stuff.
Yes. All right. Again, you could follow us.
I appreciate. I'll see you on Thursday, man. Yep.
Sounds good. At Sean Unfiltered, at Adam G Sager, and go on the Believe.com and find the Sean Salisbury Show. You get all our episodes there. All right. We'll talk to you later.